Hey everybody, it's me, Andy Lucky Hull.
And I'm Sean Aces Tabaris.
And this is the Commander's Brew.
This week, GP Vegas and some brawling.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 151 of the Commander's Brew. If you're watching YouTube right now, you can see Sarah Hillier in the back. Say hi, Sarah.
Hi!
She's just here. She's not going to be on the show or anything, but still, nice to have her around.
I'm just doing my makeup and heading out.
She's just doing her makeup and heading out. Guys, this is, we're back. It's 151. We're back from GP Vegas. Wow, what a time we had.
I love it. Can I just say that if anyone is thinking about going to a GP and they're like, oh, I want to save up and I want to go to one, make it Vegas because it is phenomenal. I've only ever been to two, Vegas and Toronto, and Vegas is the best.
Yeah, exactly. Man, it was so great. We said this last time too. So great meeting everybody. So great seeing a bunch of faces we've only seen on the internet or on Twitter or something like that. Some faces we've never seen before. Shout outs to our boy Boofeeg in chats and in on Twitch and on stream and everything. Finally got to meet him. Like number one Commander's Brew fan right there, and it was so great. Getting to play some games with him. We saw our boy Johnny Crass.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Finally.
Tried his Commander Cube.
Oh my god, we could do an entire I think we should do an entire episode on the Commander Cube. In fact, I'm saying it here, we are going to.
Oh, yeah, I already knew this because ever since I first started playing it, I was like, this is the only thing I ever want to do ever again in my life.
It's unbelievable how much I loved it. When you said that to me, I was like skeptical. I wasn't even automatically excited. I was like, oh yeah, right. Come on, it can't be that good. And then because I've heard podcasts about cubes before, and Commander Cube specifically, and everyone's like, it's a lot of fun actually. It's really, really good. You might not be expecting it to be. And I was like, yeah, right, we'll see. Even though I love Cube and I love Commander and I love drafting, like everything, it's everything I love. Anyways, I played it and did I love it? Absolutely. It is the best. It is great. So look for that in the future.
That's a teaser. We played some Brawl. We played some Commander. I want to shout out to new pal Adam. Met him, played a bunch with him. Met Charles, played a bunch with him. This is a dangerous game to start mentioning names.
Just mentioning names is too dangerous. We can't because there's so many people we hung out with.
I'll include those two because we shared a meal as well.
There you go.
I feel and then putting faces to some other content creators, getting to hang out with Ryan from Brothers War podcast, so great. Getting to hang out with another Ryan and Brando from CCO Commander Cookout. Hanging out with Nate and Patrick from Commander Time. Phil from Commander and Josh from Commander. It's just the best.
Yeah, it really truly was. A really, really great time. I also went to I got to play some Battle Bond with a bunch of some of the LRR crew, your Ashlyn Roses, things like that. Like cool. Just like Vinny, our pal from from Game Nights as well was there. Just a real true blast. Also Battle Bonded with Phil and Ryan and Vanessa. That was a lot of fun as well. Shout out to those guys. So we're just naming names here because these are just a few of like the cool and fun people you'll get to go, and it's just like everyone's wanting to play. It's so good. The beta draft, did you get to see any of the beta draft?
I did not see any of it.
It was very cool. We were there like watching it when it was happening. It was everyone going nuts over the big picks, over the big opens.
What were the games like?
You know what? I actually didn't get to see any of the games because it was pretty late by the time they started it. And
obviously the draft is bonkers for what they're opening, but does it draft well? Are the games at all good?
I honestly don't know. I know that there were some decks with a lot of lands in them. I know that.
Sure.
I know that LSV made it into the finals, but I still haven't got to watch it. Like I literally got back from Vegas this morning that we're recording this, so the Tuesday morning.
Wow.
And overnight flight, and it was like the flight itself was fine, but I was super uncomfortable. I didn't get to sleep very much. So I slept like until pretty recently. So I
Oh my
kind of
goodness.
just woke up and now we're recording. So everything's very fresh for me. But I haven't really got to like catch up on a lot of the stuff that happened. But
yeah, I feel I have only been recuperating because it's a lot of little sleep and kind of eating junk food and not drinking enough water.
Yep.
My lips fell off from the dryness. Like they got so bad. Anyway. GP Las Vegas. Of course, I recommend it.
Yeah, and of course we had like it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Our pal Wedge, who we've been talking with Wedge for a little while. He's down for coming on our show, and we're trying to. We all agree that he's going to come on. It was just a matter of when. So we hung out with Wedge at GP Toronto a little bit too. We all know what happened. His back got all messed up. He had to go in for some emergency surgery. Luckily, it was very successful, and he's doing fine now, which is very, very good. So, I mean, that was a very stressful time there for all of the people who know Wedge and care about that guy. So, luckily, he came out of that good, but with a pretty serious medical bill. So, the CCO guys took a little something, right? They took a charge of something that looks like it's going to help out.
Yeah, we did an Atraxa Bowl while we were there.
Oh, we're going to talk about Atraxa Bowl too.
We'll talk about that too, but nonetheless, we all signed an Atraxa, like a sort of like a full art version converted into like a regular card size. We all signed it. All the people involved in Atraxa Bowl signed it, and they have a couple of extra special like custom cards that people made for the event, and they're auctioning that off. So if you want, and all of the entire auction is gonna go in your name to the like Wedge's GoFundMe for his surgery. So you can go check out their Facebook page. It's they're at CCO Podcast on Facebook, or you can look up Commander Cookout Podcast. So if you want to bid on those things or check it out, I recommend it. And help out the community, right? One thing that we always say around here is that we have one of the best communities that there is. When we all decide to like band together and help each other, there's so much support and love between us. So let's show everyone how true that is.
Absolutely. Definitely have a big chance to show it here, and I think we should. So, go hit that up. Also, I know whatever. Marshall was supposed to be like playing. Marshall from LR was supposed to actually be playing in this GP, and we were thinking about hanging, but he had to bail on it last minute too. So hopefully everything's good with him. But really that was just like those were just some hiccups that hopefully got ironed out, because the overall experience was overwhelmingly positive. Lots and lots of fun. Tons of Magic being played. Do you want to talk about Atraxa Bowl off the top?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Atraxa Bowl is something the Commander Cookout fellows put together, and we did 2 pods of all Atraxa matches, and then the top 2 from each pod went to the final pod and played the final match. And everyone, the rule was no straight Super Friends and no straight plus one counters, right?
No.
None of the typical.
Sorry, no straight Super Friends, no infect.
No, infect. Okay, my mistake. But anyway, we all played some things. My first pod, so I'm representing Commander's Brew, and we were playing a Atraxa Helm of the Host legendaries. Tons of legendaries, tons of ways to find Helm of the Host, and just spamming all that. I played against Nate, who just from Commander Time, who had a dirty deck, which was just a lot of like ways like turning everything into swamps and then turning swamps into creatures and giving all creatures -1/-1. So like just one-sided board wipes, all kinds of stuff like that. Excuse me. I need a sip of water. Hang on. I got to fluff.
Go for it. So also quickly, I built the Atraxa deck based on the brew that we did here on the show, the Rubinia Soul Singer deck. Which I know a lot of people were stoked about and excited about and played and stuff. And so I just kind of like morphed that into Atraxa, added black, de-budgetified it a little bit, but not too bad, because there was a budget restriction on it. Although, did I adhere to it? Not really.
Nope.
There was 1 or 2 big money cards in there just that I had, just happened to be in my collection, so I threw them in there. So like Commander's Brew was repping an over budget deck technically at this. And so how did it do, Jean?
Well, It started off very interesting. So the other two players were Ryan from CCO, and he was playing. It was hard to tell what he was doing at first, as he calls it, instant win Atraxa. And then Patrick from Commander Time was running unusual counters Atraxa. So like
fun.
Things that were like -0, -1s, and +0, +2s, and like
filibuster counters and things like that.
Like he had like a Frankenstein, which lets you put either 0-2 counters or 1-1s or 2-1s on it, and he was putting all different counters on different things. It was very bizarre.
That's funny.
Very funny. So we started out. We got our Atraxa out pretty soon.
Nice.
We got the way we got our Helm of the Host was with Stonehewer Giant, and we whipped out a.
I knew that would be worth it.
Be totally worth it. And then Nate started to put this enchantment on a swamp that says whenever spreading algae, whenever you tap this swamp that it's enchanting, you have to sacrifice it, and the spreading algae goes back to its owner's hand. So he kept throwing that around, and of course he plays Urborg to make everything swamps. Ryan is dirtling around. I'm not sure what he's up to. Patrick is messing around with fun counters, and our Helm gets us multiple Atraxas.
Sweet.
So I'm up to like 3 or 4 Atraxas. And the key round of plays was that Nate tried to do a Korma spell and then tried to turn all of his, which turns all swamps into 1/1 creatures. And since Urborg's out, everything is a swamp. Mm-hmm. And then a spell that turns gives all opponents creatures -1/-1 until end of turn. So it'll be effectively a one-sided board wipe for lands, a one-sided land wipe. So I'm like, well, hey table, if you all agree with me, if we all join against Nate and you join my side, I will save us from this. And I wanted verbal confirmation from them. I was like, I'll let it all go if you don't all agree to this. And they're like, okay, we'll be a team. So then I Anguished Unmade the Korma spell just in time, so we all survived that. And then Ryan lays down a Coalition Relic. Patrick's turn happens, and Ryan's like, hey man, can you up my Coalition Relic with your 3 Atraxas? Can you proliferate it 3 times? And I'm like, what's in it for me? And he's like, oh, I'll get those Sol Rings back into your hand, because Athada Adele had gotten Sol Rings on Nate's board. So like I was like, oh cool, get that to my hand. That sounds like a fair deal. So I gave him some mana. Nate does his thing, gets back, just trying to build more pieces, gets back to Ryan, and he goes, okay, so I'm going to use all the mana you gave me. I'm going to cast Biovisionary, and then I'm going to Rite of Replication it. So I'm going to win on my end step. And then I'm just like, okay, but what about this Sol Ring? And he's like, what about it? He's like, it needs to come back to my hand before you win this game, or else I will consider this deal a betrayal. he's just like, well, no, I mean, like, and so it became this very interesting discussion. I was really ragging on him real hard about it. I mean, no hard feelings for real, but I held it above him for quite some time, how he just totally betrayed me. I played the Canadian card on him. I'm like, I would expect this from someone else, but from another Canadian. Like, I really laid the guilt on thick for him. He had no intention of bringing my Sol Ring back to my hand. Total lie.
Just a total lie. He just lied to you about that.
Straight up lying.
Wow. That is not something we condone here on the Commander's Brew podcast.
No.
Not at all. But that's funny. Still. Wow. Okay, so Biovisionaries win on your end step?
If you have 5 of them or 4 of them or something like that.
I, for some reason, thought it was always on your upkeep.
That makes sense. That's what most things are.
Yeah. No, it's the end step. No.
Huh.
Yeah, all right. Wow. Yeah, man, Biovisionary. That's going to be a win. I know that their deck was all, well, I found it after, was all alternate win cons. Like, it was all stuff like that, right? So that's that's the thing, all the neat brews. I'm really happy to have seen that. That seems like it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
I was bummed out I couldn't actually be in there playing it, but I'm happy that you rep well. You guys did play for second though, right? And you took second?
Well, so the way it worked is Ryan sort of bowed out, and the 3 of us kept playing for second place to see who moves on to the next pod. I handily had that game wrapped up because Patrick, unfortunately, was stuck on mana the whole time. He just couldn't do anything much. I'm not going to feel too bad for him. He put in very mana-hungry cards with lots of symbols.
Oh, really? Okay.
But also, Nate, after a little bit of disruption, he had dirty combos in there, but he needed a few pieces to get them, and I was just a bit too quick for him with just hitting in the air with an Atraxa, a Wrath Capuchin, and an Arvad the Cursed, and the three of those together do some pretty good work.
Oh, wow. You used Arvad and Wrath. I'm so glad to see that some of the Dominaria uncommon legends made an appearance.
Yeah, like I tell you, Wrath is so good in that deck. Being able to flash in Atraxa on an end step and leave her mostly protected, amazing.
Yeah.
Flashing in an Arvad, being like, oh, is this how you're blocking? Flash in Arvad. There we go.
Oh, wicked combat trick.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So I actually did play that deck later in the weekend.
Ooh.
After you had left.
Now, one thing that I didn't get to do that I really am curious to see, and I hope you never get to do this against me, is Helm of the Host on, oh geez, what's her name? Elish Norn.
Oh yeah, that's right. Surprise, surprise, everyone. I did get an Elish Norn with some trade-in value from stuff I'd had in the old binder here. And did pick up an Elish Norn and did put it in that deck and was like, oh man, this has got to be one of the craziest Helm of the Host targets.
Can you imagine? Everyone else gets -4/-4?
And
like...
you're +4/+4. Like, one Elish Norn is bad enough. It's very
Two
bad.
Elish Norns?
Yeah. 2 Elish Norns. That's not something we get to say very often on this podcast.
You know what your deck needed, though, that I wish I couldn't find? So after my Stone Hero Giant found the Helm of the Host, you know what I really wanted to find that wasn't in there? Blackblade Reforged.
Yeah, I think it was a cut. I think Blackblade was a cut.
Okay.
I definitely did have it in the deck at first. So the other equipment in there is in that deck. Maybe we'll post a deck list here because I think maybe people are interested in this kind of like budget upgrade to that deck. We had a Skull Clamp in there, I believe.
Yeah. And a Hammer of Nazan.
Was Skull Clamp in there? Or am I thinking of a different deck? I might be thinking of a different
you're thinking of a different deck.
No,
it wasn't in there.
It was Hammer.
I used
Hammer of Nazan,
Stone Hewer to find all the available equipment.
And was it just those two things?
It was Swiftfoot Boots,
Oh yeah, Boots.
Helm of the Host,
That's what it was.
and Hammer of Nazan.
Yeah, and I would have put a Greaves in, but I didn't have an. Like it was. Yeah, I didn't have one. I just didn't have an extra Greaves line.
Oh, check out this line of play. I have all that going, and at one point Patrick plays down. What's that automaton that when you cast him, all the equipment gets attached to him?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it, though.
So he played that, and I'm just like, oh, he's got my helm and my boots and my hammer. It's like, I can pay to re-equip them to my creatures,
right.
But if he gets another... Because he had his own Helm of the Host. He was trying something similar.
Oh, wow.
So, but if he gets another one of those automatons, then all the equipment just comes back to him. So I was like, oh, okay, I think I figured it out. So then I just played a clone type spell on his automaton. So now I have all the equipment, and on my combat step, a new one appears and now gets all the equipment again. So I was like, I think I've got this equipment safe.
Sweet. Yeah. There's a very there's only those 3 pieces of equipment, but they're very good, very important. So like, there's a lot of ways, a couple ways to tutor up that equipment. So in that deck, we including a Stoneforge Mystic, which I got out
GP Toronto
in my game. Yeah, we got a GP Toronto for entering into that when we didn't know that we didn't have to. What else? Oh yeah, so when I played with that deck, I got Profane Procession out.
Ooh.
And I was playing against like an Atali and some wacky Child of Alara deck that was basically a Pauper deck, but it was like filled with crazy combos and something else. Anyways, and I just kept using Profane Procession. Like I kept, because it's like completely oppressive for commanders because you pay the 5. It exiles it, but it doesn't count as being exiled with Profane Procession if they put it into the command zone. Like I even looked up the rules on that just to make sure that's how they work, and it is confirmed that's how it works. So Profane Procession ends up being this amazing onboard answer to any commander in whether it's in this format or Brawl or anything. So
wow,
I ended up actually like sitting around using that more than anything else, and then eventually getting Helm on a Prime Speaker Zagana and drawing way too many cards and winning the game that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, very good. That deck is a lot of fun. and definitely not on the cheap side. Although not like thousands of dollars or anything, just more than we're used to spending. That's all.
Yeah, right.
Just
it's
a bit
fun
more.
to flex a little.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, okay, speaking of budgets and speaking of cheap decks, that was Atraxa Bowl, but we also got a chance to play a bunch of Brawl.
Yes.
Andy and I put a couple of Brawl decks together, and that's one of the things we want to talk about in this episode is our experience. This is the first time we got to play some multiplayer Brawl, and we want to share our experiences, and I'm going to share like a little bit of a deck tech on one of the decks I brought to GP Vegas, and spoiler alert, I had a ton of fun with it.
Yes. So I guess overall, before we get into the deck tech, which is going to be admittedly a bit smaller for this episode. This is more of
a little bit
more recapping and talking about this format now, actually. But I gotta say, I very much did enjoy playing Brawl.
I enjoyed it immensely. The games were always very interesting. I didn't play a million games, but they all seemed like everyone was in the game at all times until we decided one player must go down and we all teamed up on them.
And yeah, so there's so as we all know, Brawl is the basically commander for standard, essentially. It's the commander that uses the standard card pool, and of course you can have planeswalkers as your planeswalkers, and there's no commander damage. Those are the basic, like, those are the differences, right? Those are the
30 life.
And 30 life, of course. There's a lot of pros and cons to this. I think some people are a little bit leaning towards the con side. I talked to a lot of people who just didn't have Brawl decks, simply weren't interested in playing. Then I talked to some people who would like, I brought my Brawl deck, does anyone want to play? And then like no one wanted to play with them. And they were like, come on, I just want to play. And that was me for a while. I was talking to our friend Dan Krause. Shout out to Dan. You're going to see him on Battle of the Brews when we get going, because he donated to the Kickstarter to be a guest on, so he's going to come on and bring one of his fun commander decks. But we were two of us were walking around going, who wants to play Brawl? Who wants to play Brawl? We have Brawl decks. So finally, Ryan from Ryan from Brothers War sat down and played with us, as well as Vinny. And Vinny used my Rada deck, and I played an Ariel Knight of Windgrace deck, which was Knight and Vampire Tribal.
Cool.
Which was fun, a lot of fun. And Sean, I gotta say, noted curmudgeon about Brawl, Josh Lee Kwai, was up for playing Brawl. I'll give that to him. We talked to him. He's like, yeah, okay, I'll play. But then Cassius Marsh and some other people wanted to play Commander, so he played with them, which is fine. When your friend, the NFL player, wants to play Commander with you, you probably go play Commander with them. So we played some Brawl, and I had a lot of fun. It's very different. The game is like the biggest knock on Brawl that I've heard, besides the rotation, is that these games are going to take too long. The boards gum up very, very easily, very quickly, and they tend to be a lot of board stalls, and it takes a long time. In addition to the fact that commanders are the lead, planeswalkers can be the commanders. I didn't really find that to be the reason why the games were taking a long time. I thought the games took a little bit longer just because of the board stalls. But like, it's important to note about what we're talking about when we talk about how long a game takes, right? Some people's idea of a long Commander game is 45 minutes. Some people's idea of a long Commander game is 3 hours. Some people's idea of a normal size Commander game is 1 hour long, an hour and a half, hour 15 minutes, or something like that. What would you say it is in our meta? I think it's somewhere between like 45 minutes to an hour.
You think average or long?
I think that's how long the average game is.
I would say on average we're about an hour. Our 4-player games are about an hour.
Yeah.
And then our long games are 2 hours.
Yes. And those are like long, and like maybe like they're too long. You know, like I don't want to play a 2-hour game of Commander all the time. Although if it's good, whatever, it's good. And if everyone's having fun, who cares, right? But I understand those concerns. I gotta say, if you're in the boat that Sean and I are in, where that's your average game, Brawl's gonna be just fine for you.
Yep.
Right? Like, don't let people tell you that this is like too long and it's very bad and all this. Like, it's just not the case. If you're used to a much faster game and a much spikier meta where there's lots of combos and things like that, and that's what you enjoy, then maybe Brawl is not what you're looking to do.
Yes. If you are into turn 3 win commander, who can stop each other, who can disrupt each other till you can get your combo out, that's not what Brawl is. Brawl cannot go there. Quite frankly, I'm not a fan of that kind of commander.
Yeah.
I prefer more janky, more kind of decks that want to do kind of their theme things. That's Brawl's bread and butter. Mm-hmm. That's all Brawl is.
Yes. It's simply, it's like synergy over basically all else, right? Although you did come up with I was gonna say there's not really combos. Goodbye. Sarah's leaving. It's synergy based. It's like a lot of it's tribal because of the because of Ixalan. But yeah, it's if that's the kind of stuff you dig, which I think if you've listened to our show, that's kind of, it's pretty obvious that is what we dig. It's going to be just fine. And so like, for example, like we played a game with myself and Dan. We're looking for people to play Commander, and we ran into, I don't know his name. I forget his name, from Elder Dragon Society, which is like a Facebook page, and they have Twitter and YouTube and all that. Very cool dude, and a friend of his. I can't remember their names, but they were really, really nice. And we were talking about Commander, and at one point he's like, yeah, man, like I joined in that Commander tournament, and like it just wasn't good. And we're like, yeah, we've heard a lot of people say it wasn't great because it was very spiky, and all this. And he's like, yeah, you know what? People were out there just running crazy combos, like turn 2, turn 3 combos. And he's like, that's just not what I'm in for, man. He's like, you got to be able to disrupt those combos and then win with your combo. It's like, he had a very different take on it. So when we sat down to play Commander with him, me and Dan, and him and his friend were like, they're from the same meta. They live in Vegas, and they're from a very spiky, like tournament competitive EDH meta. And Dan and I were like, well, at least this isn't going to take very long.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, as in like, we're going to lose to these decks, but at least it's not going to take long. So, there's something, the great thing about Commander and Magic in general is that there's something for everyone. So, just know what if you're that type, if you're more competitive, it's not going to be for you. But if you have a meta at home, especially, like this is a fun meta to play with newer players. It's fun to play it's more casual, as long as you're not trying to jam half-hour games. I don't think you're going to be able to do that in Commander, even though.
But here's an argument I want to make in favor of Brawl and time. It's like, maybe if you like click a stopwatch with Commander and you click a stopwatch in Brawl, like which one finished first? Did Commander finish first? If so, I bet you that's because someone resolved a combo that they tutored for that they got to. And how fun is that? Like, is that really fun? I think what's a more accurate timer is how long does each turn take? How long does it take to go around the table in each format? Mm-hmm. I think it takes way longer to go around the table in Commander than it does in Brawl, which I am happy to trade a longer game to get more turns and play more of the game. Like to have less time sitting around where I get to walk away, get a drink. I mean, those are pluses. I love that we can do that in our format. But like, I feel like I'm engaged the entire Brawl game. Whereas sometimes in Commander, it's just like, oh boy, I'm not really doing anything. These turns are taking forever. I'm kind of just sitting here twiddling my thumb, checking my phone for like a good 15 minutes until it's my turn again. That doesn't happen in Brawl, at least not from my limited experience.
Yeah, someone's not gonna like, I don't know, tutor something and take 25 minutes to like try and assemble this combo in this really broken way, and then figure out they can't actually do it this turn, and so they spent 25 minutes doing nothing, which can happen, especially if you're playing against the player who's like, not as familiar with their deck or whatever. I heard of this happening during we didn't talk about it off the top, but there was a big Commander tournament at GP Vegas, like a big thing that like first of all, I wasn't there that day, so like I didn't even have the opportunity to play in it, but I knew right away that I was like, I don't want to play in this. Anytime you talk about Commander and there being a prize pool, like there's prizes for winners, I'm just like, well, that's just not going to be my style of play, so I'm okay with not playing in it. So anyways,
so I mean, so for playing some Brawl, like you can get spiky with it, but you still have to win by attacking with creatures and doing direct damage. And like there may be some combos in Brawl, but they take a lot of work to get to. And maybe you fall for it the first time because you didn't see it coming. But once you've seen it coming, you're like, aha, I know what this is, and I have many tools to stop it and much time to stop it. I have a lot of time to do my own thing. It's just, it seems like the games offer more of what I like about Commander. Am I saying I like Brawl better than Commander? No, I'm not saying that. But I am saying brew up a Brawl deck. It's pretty fun. Toss it around with your pals, and then just see if it isn't a refreshing treat.
And one of the things I was a little worried about with Brawl is it how it's going to affect the costs of some of the cards that are just janky silliness that I like to play in Commander that are currently in Standard. So obviously Standard raises the price of the good cards that are in Standard, and if they happen to be good Commander cards as well, that's a bummer. I was like, well, is Brawl going to come along and make that even worse for other cards that are like Commander worthy and now Brawl worthy? But is that going to be is it going to cost a lot of money to put together a Brawl deck? And the answer, I think, is it's kind of in the middle. So no, because you can basically put the vast majority of any Brawl deck together for nothing. It's very, very cheap, Yeah. And again, Dominaria, this might even be unique to a Brawl that features Dominaria in its format, right? Because
who knows,
right? Because Dominaria has legends, multicolored legends at uncommon, which is that's just a rare thing to happen in Magic, period. So your Commander is not this sought after thing that costs a ton of money sometimes. But in general, I'm pretty happy with where the prices on Brawl are. That being said, there are some cards that you pretty much, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I kind of think every deck needs to have the Immortal Sun in it. Just because it's 6. I mean, and I did come across people who were like, well, I'm not running it in this deck, or I don't need it, or whoa. I think that's true as well. But that card's expensive, and it's kind of a bummer that I think it's kind of a staple. It might not be, though. I might be wrong on that. Maybe I am.
Yeah, I mean, 60 cards is a tight deck.
It is.
I'm used to brewing 100 cards. I'm just like, oh boy, I gotta make 30 cuts here.
Yeah.
By the time I was like, this deck is huge.
Yeah.
And you really got to make I cut it from the deck I'm about to talk about today, because I wanted more slots for other effects in my deck. And I didn't think that was something I needed for this deck. But
this deck is pretty unique, though.
Well, I think so. I'm happy with it.
You should be. I think it's a lot of fun. It is very unique, and you definitely don't need one in this deck. But if you're just planning to jam with creatures and get your tribal synergies going, or your whatever, it's artifacts or whatever it is, I think that card's going to be pretty ubiquitous. I think but there's a bunch of them, right? And they're all rares, and they're all it's no real difference than normal Standard. It's just that you kind of want more of them in these more concentrated decks. You want Tender Shoot Dryad, you want some of the other ones. But but I honestly don't think it's as big an effect as what I thought. So I'm surprised to find myself being totally okay with what's happening as far as card prices go.
Well, and even so to use Tender Shoot Dryad as an example, so about it's between $7 and $10 right now, I believe. And you would probably want that in a Brawl deck, and once it rotates out of Standard, I bet you it will drop in price, but it won't be good for Brawl anymore. That's true. But unlike Standard, you won't ever need 4 copies of anything. So if you want, I can drop $7 on a card if I really want to, if it's fun. I don't mind doing that. I didn't for this deck, but I mean, that seems reasonable to me. Whereas dropping $28 on a set of a card seems a bit pricey.
Yeah. And what I mean is you will need to get Tender Shoot Dryad, because subbing it out for something else, there isn't really anything to sub it out for. It's not you know what I mean? It's and because the card pool's smaller, and because the deck is so much smaller, you need that card. You need that card. If you're building Slimefoot, you need Tender Shoot Dryad. Basically, it has to be in there, because it is one of the very few, I was surprised to find out, cards that make Saprolinks. There's actually not that many of them.
I mean, this won't be a Slimefoot deck, but, spoiler alert on a Slimefoot deck, most of the other cards are dirt cheap. So
yes, they are.
You can afford that $7.
Yes, so that's the upside, and it's and that's what kind of makes it, you know what? It's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be, so I'm actually pretty happy to get into Brawl. And We'll talk about when we get there about the rotation because that's a
Should we
big
get
issue.
into it?
Let's get into it. Let's talk about this deck.
Okay. So I brewed. This is the third deck I put together because I had an idea and I just want to try some stuff. But I feel like this is my favorite deck that I put together so far. Tatyova Benthic Druid, 3 green blue, legendary Merfolk Druid, 3/3. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain a life and draw a card. What a great commander. We got card draw, we're playing lands, we're gaining life. It sounds great to me, right? But I have 2 secret commanders inside the deck. In blue, the secret commander is Time Stream Navigator, 1 in a blue, human pirate wizard, 1/1 with Ascend. So when you have the city's blessing, also very easy to do in Brawl.
Very easy.
You get to do 2 blue tap, put Time Stream Navigator on the bottom of its owner's library, take an extra turn after this one, activate only if you have the city's blessing. So yeah, that's in there. We can take an extra turn and put on the bottom there. And who's the secret green commander?
It is Multani, Yavimaya's avatar. 4 green legendary elemental avatar, reach and trample. It's a 0/0, but it gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land card in your graveyard. No surprise that this is going to go well with Tatyova. And then Multani has 1 and a green. Return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand. Return Multani from your graveyard to your hand. So you pay 1 and a green, bounce 2 lands back, and then you can get Multani right back to your hand as well.
Great. So in case you haven't put it together, Tatyova is an engine to get us to mill ourselves as much as possible.
I have not put that together.
We have not. Well, this is what we're doing.
Yes.
If we mill Multani, we get to pull it back to our hand and cast it regularly. And if we mill enough of our deck so that we have no cards in our library, Time Stream Navigator becomes an infinite combo. More on that later.
What?
So this is sort of a spiritual Lab Maniac deck in Brawl.
Which is like so funny because like those were the decks that when people were like, yeah, I played in that commander tournament, it was like blah blah blah, I did this in Lab Maniac. It's like, woof, who cares? That's no fun. Anyways, here we go. Our Brawl deck is kind of Lab Maniac. But but you know what? In this format, it's actually kind of the thing that this format is missing to make it a little bit different. Like it's funny how you might decry this in Commander, but in Brawl, I think it's actually kind of a welcome angle.
Yeah, and because it isn't written on the card. If you draw from an empty library, you win the game.
No, of course not.
But you can kind of like fudge it that way. So one of the main strategies this deck wants to do is mill ourselves. We want to mill ourselves as fast as possible. And again, there's a lot of cards that mill, and I had to make a lot of cuts. I had to get creative. So I'll highlight some of my favorites that still stayed in the deck. World Shaper, 3 and a green, Merfolk Shaman, 3/3. Whenever it attacks, you can put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and if World Shaper dies, put all land cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped, which is, needless to say, amazing with Tatyova out. And if we've milled ourselves a few times before this, we have the potential of ramping by 5 or more lands, or even more.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Next here we have Perpetual Timepiece. 2 colorless for an artifact that says tap and put the top 2 cards of your library in your graveyard, and then you can pay 2 and exile it to shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library.
Yeah, so that's free milling every turn.
Yep, just tap it, dump 2, and then do you ever use the second piece of this in this deck?
I would, because there's a fair bit of graveyard hate floating around out there. So if I need to get my time stream out of the graveyard or save Multani, if I just need to do something as an emergency to save some things, I can get all the good stuff out of my graveyard back into my library.
Yeah, that's definitely true. With Muldrotha being a commander in Brawl, you do need to pack some graveyard hate in this format. And there's the totem, there's the crooked something.
Yeah, there's a land, the desert land that does it.
Desert land. There's also the pirate tombstone thing. I don't know the names of these cards, but I certainly know what the art looks like on them. Crook of Condemnation. That's the one I was thinking of. That's from Amonkhet, I think. Anyways.
Another card that works well in this deck is a real draft dud, but it's Kamal's Druidic Vow. X green for a legendary sorcery. We have to have Tatyova out to cast it, or Multani, or another one of our legendaries. legendary sorcery. Look at the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of land cards and or legendary permanent cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. The rest go into your graveyard. We're not going to hit many legendaries. We just want to hit lands. But the key text of this is that we can look at the top cards. We are not drawing them, so there's no danger of overpaying this and killing ourselves. And we put the rest into our graveyard, which is what we want to do. So we're just going to get through our deck that much faster, as well as draw a few more cards. If Tatyova's out, we have to be careful that we don't draw to 0 with this, because then as the lands come in, Tatyova will force us to draw more, and then we will kill ourselves that way. Just be aware that every land that enters, Tatyova will draw you a card that is not a May.
Yeah, very important to note. I kept forgetting that Kamal's Druidic Vow did the land part.
Yes.
I always just pictured it as the legendary thing. It gains a little bit of value from that.
Yep.
Certainly in this deck, it's straight up good, but there's some other decks where I wasn't considering it, and I'm like, actually, maybe I should. Great. What's happening here next? We got to get through more cards.
Yeah, so here's just some cards that help us get through our library quicker using clever and unique ways. Do you want to start us off here, Andy?
Yeah, this one is neat. I like this card a lot. Precognition Field. 3 and a blue for an enchantment from Dominaria. It says you may look at the top card of your library, and then you may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card, and then 3 mana to exile the top card of your library.
Great. So if we get clever with this, we can look at the top card, and if it's an instant or sorcery, we can cast it. Therefore, we get through our library quicker. If we hate it, we can pay 3 and exile it. But if we still have a land drop, we can decide, do I play my land and draw that card with Tatyova, or do I just cast it off the top, then play my land, then draw the next card with Tatyova?
Very cool.
We can really mess around with that. And then for the same token, we're going to talk about Vizier of the Menagerie. 3 and a green lets you look at the top card of your library, and you can cast that card if it's a creature, and you can spend any mana of any color for that. So with both of those out, we can cast anything that isn't a land, basically. Although we have a couple of enchantments and artifacts that we also can't cast. But we have access to just playing through the top of our deck quickly.
Very
and
cool.
let me tell you, Tatyova gets through lands pretty quick. You have a lot of land as the game goes on with that deck.
That's great. You also need just general draw spells, right? Something like Strategic Planning is very good in this deck. 1 and a blue for a sorcery that says look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Just a mill and a draw. This is just value town in this deck.
Yeah. For 2 mana, we've seen 3 cards deeper. We've
Yeah.
gone 3 cards deeper. Fantastic.
Very good.
So now it's becoming a Commander's Brew tradition. You want to talk about some neat moves?
This is the new segment of the show, Neat Moves, where it's just general cool stuff that the deck can do that's on theme.
Yeah, how about Rashmi Eternity's Crafter? 2 green, blue, legendary elf druid. This is something that Kamal's Druidic Vow can hit. 2/3. Whenever you cast your first spell of each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's non-land with converted mana cost less than that spell's mana cost, cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't cast it, put it into your hand. Every time we cast a spell on a turn, instant on other people's turns, anything on our turn, we go through an additional card of our deck. This helps us mill through our deck even faster.
And lets us see, we get to the stuff we see with Precognition Field and stuff too. We can see if it's going to come in, right?
Yeah, we can sort of, if we have Precog Field or Vizier out, we can sort of be like, okay, there's a 2-drop on the top, so I want to make sure I play a 3-drop to get that 2-drop and then do other things. Oh, man, the deck is very fun.
Next we have an interesting one, Gaia's Blessing, 1 and a green. For a sorcery, this says target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library, then draw a card. But then also it says when Gaia's Blessing is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library. This seems to be anti what you want to do, isn't it?
Yes. So this is a tough card. I want to play with the deck more to see if it's good and it's bad, because there's some big pros and some big cons. The big con is you don't get through your deck fast enough, because if you mill this yourself, which we are doing a lot of, we just shuffle everything back in. It's also bad because Multani pays attention to lands in your graveyard.
Yeah.
And if you shuffle all those back in, Multani shrinks significantly. However, this can be a fantastic lifesaver if Time Stream Navigator's in your graveyard or other key cards. Like, this is a way to get them back in your deck, and it won't shuffle it in. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about, like, I want to play with it more. I've seen situations where it has for certainly won me the game.
Really?
Because my library was very low.
Yeah.
And I decided to use it to put key sorceries back into my deck. And my odds of drawing them were very high. And those key sorceries, which I drew and played, won me the game.
This could also just be like, if you all the work you've done milling, if you mill this, all that work is erased.
It's true, but the way I look at it, and again, I want to play more, because if I've already got tons of lands on the battlefield due to Tatyova and that elf that lets you put lands from your hand down, if I'm able to do a lot of that and I shuffle in a graveyard that's just chock full of gas, there are worse things.
Okay, so maybe it's not as bad an effect as it seems like it might be.
I don't know. Like, we need some way to get our time stream out, just in case, and this is another way to, like, maybe someone else is trying to mill us. Like, I don't know. I've yet to see it, but I'm sure someone will make a Brawl deck that wants to mill other people using Fraying Sanity and cards like that.
Is Fraying Sanity in this yet? Is it?
It's not. No. Can you target yourself with it? It's a legal card in this format.
Oh, I thought it was from, like, Shadows of Innistrad or something.
No. It's Amonkhet or Hour.
Oh, Fraying Sanity. Yeah, there it is. You're right. That's a serious mill card. I mean, there's a mill deck in Dominaria Draft if you get the right cards. Now, mind you need multiple copies of those cards, so it's probably not as viable in Brawl. But if you have stuff like Fraying Sanity, maybe it really is something.
Well, as I said, Gaia's Blessing might be, like, we don't have to mill ourselves out to get to Time Stream Navigator. We can do other things as well. The rest of this deck is a lot of counter spells and a lot of draw spells, so, you know, we should be able to handle ourselves otherwise.
Right. Interesting.
Oh, one thing that I put in there, I mean, it's not on the list, but I put Entrancing Melody in the deck. It's the X spell that lets you gain control of creature with CMC X or less. I used that over in Bolus's Clutches because this one is a sorcery, because it's going to go to my graveyard, and I might get it back through this card, through shuffling it in, through, which I'm going to talk about in a later, the Mirari Conjecture. So, like, being able to steal your creatures with a spell and get that spell back is very effective.
Right, because it's a sorcery. Right,
yeah.
I see. Speaking of the Mirari Conjecture, next is the Mirari Conjecture.
Yeah.
4 and a blue for the Saga that has 3 steps, of course. And the first one is return target instant card from your graveyard to your hand. Second step is return a sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. And the third is until next turn, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy.
This card does so much work when we're ready to do a lot of milling. Maybe we've got Tatyova out. We cast it, we return an instant. Maybe we grab a counter spell if we need it, or maybe we grab a simple draw spell. We return a sorcery, maybe it's a River's Rebuke, maybe it's another draw spell, maybe it's a ramp spell, but then we hold on to it till part 3. Like, if we can, I've done a little game where it was like, okay, everything's doubled. Okay, I'll double this draw spell, and I'll double this draw spell, and look at that. Half my deck is gone right there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, this is one of the more fun, seems like, build around cards from Dominaria, no matter what you're talking about, whether it's no matter what format you're in. Mirari Conjecture is something that people just, like, want to build with, it seems, which is the mark of a good, a well-designed card, I would say.
Agreed.
So we talked about our other commanders.
Yes. So just as a highlight, as they are, as how they work, right? Why don't you start with Multani?
Right. So Multani, this is obviously, this guy and any kind of milling strategy is just going to work out for you. And of course, any kind of land-based strategy is going to benefit him also. So he gets real big, real fast, and you can always get it back from your graveyard, aside from it being exiled, of course. And it also helps with Tatyova, because you're going to be returning those you're going to be bouncing those lands to your hand and then replaying them, which is more card draw, which is more mill, getting us to our Time Stream Navigator. So what do we do with Time Stream Navigator, Sean? Explain this. Right.
So I'm okay playing Time Stream Navigator earlier in the game. and then you tap it with 2 blue and put it on the bottom of your library, and take another turn and just keep that rolling. There are plenty of shuffle effects with different lands and things like that. That happens from time to time, so it usually isn't on the bottom. Nonetheless, our goal is to eventually get our library to 0, and here's how this combo works once you're at 0. You have no cards in the library, so then I activate Time Stream Navigator for 4 mana, and I put it on the bottom, which is also the top of my library, and I pass the turn. On my turn, I draw my last card, which is Time Stream Navigator.
Yeah, you pass the turn to yourself, you mean?
Yes, I pass the turn to myself. And I will draw my Time Stream Navigator, and now I have an empty library. I will cast Time Stream Navigator, so I've spent 6 mana. No, I've spent 2 mana to cast it, and I need to have another 4 mana open. So
and haste.
I don't need haste, because here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to my upkeep. So yeah, that gets us rolling. So like the other people get a turn here, but here's where I start to go forever. During my upkeep, I will use Time Stream Navigator. So before I draw from my empty library.
Okay, so you've emptied your library. You got Time Stream Navigator in your hand.
Yes.
You play it. The same turn that you drew it for 2.
Yes.
You let
so
you
now
let it go
now
around.
I have an empty library.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
During my upkeep, I activate it, and then I go to my draw, which would have killed me, but instead I draw this.
Right.
I play it. And now my extra turn, which is coming, I do the same thing on my upkeep. On my upkeep, I activate it and I play it out right away. And then on the next turn, during that upkeep, I play it and activate it, right? So like you keep doing it during your upkeep so that you never actually draw from 0. And as long as we have something like Slippery Scoundrel out, the thing that is unblockable and hexproof if you have City's Blessing, like, or maybe a gigantic Multani that can go uncontested, you just have other ways of winning the game. Now, if all that fails and you have no way to win the game at that point and it's a full stalemate, that just sucks. But
you messed up.
What a ride. What a ride it would have been anyway.
What a ride it would have been.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, you do. You just need some way to keep it rolling, right? Like, you just need any like, if there's no flyers on board, any flyer. If you have any unblockable thing, you know what I mean? So it's not that hard. It's not like you need like a Perforos and a sack engine and this and this and this. Like, it can be fairly easy. Now, it can also be messed up if you do have a flyer, it's a 2/2 or something, and then your opponent has a 3/3 flyer. It's like, well,
yes,
you can kill everyone except for that guy, and then try I don't know what, right? But
Multani will help a lot with this, because we can attack with a gigantic Multani, and even if they trade a bunch of creatures for our Multani in subsequent extra turns, we can get it back from the graveyard, cast it again. We have a lot of things we can do with this. And that's just one way to go, right? Like, I mean, if not for stealing their creatures and recurring that spell, like, we have Scribe of the Mindful to recur spells that we care about, all kinds of stuff like that. It seems like a very fun deck. Yeah, I loved playing it. I can't wait to play more of it.
Did you win the game with this?
I did win a game with it, yeah.
And I was against. And you did the combo?
I didn't do the combo, but because the combo takes a load of work.
Yeah.
So we were playing against a Galta deck and a Saheeli Rai deck. And the Saheeli Rai deck had a ton of vehicles and like Gearhulks and stuff, and the Glorybringer, and we were just like, oh, this is oppressive. So I was like, hey, dinosaurs, are we going to team up with this? And they're like, she was like, yeah, let's team up. So I was teamed up with the dinosaurs, doing our thing, taking up the Glorybringer. She was using Galta and like just to like do massive damage, and I was like, okay. And I was doing River's Rebuke on the Saheeli Rai player to help the dinosaurs, knowing the whole time I was like, I gotta have a backup plan to deal with these dinosaurs when the time is right. So it's so much more political than before. I love that aspect of it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics at play because of the board stalls, because of the thing. So it's like, you need to be able to team up to deal with threats, and you need, it's very interesting like that. There's not a ton of board wipes in the format, although there are some. Mostly situated in, like, you've got the River's Rebuke, which isn't a board wipe. It's a single person, but it's still very powerful for the person who's out ahead.
Star of Extinction.
You've got Fumigate, Settle the Wreckage.
Solar Wreckage if they're attacking.
Yeah, again, one person if they're attacking.
You have the one that is attached to a dinosaur, destroy all non-dinosaurs.
Yep. There's that one. There's also the triple white Hour of
Promise.
Sure. Yeah.
Hour of
There's 2 hours. The red and white hour are both basically board wipes, and then there's one other red one.
Bantu's.
There's Bantu's Last Reckoning.
Yeah.
And so there's there's enough, right? And
we're talking.
They're across the colors. But like if you're in black and green, you only have one, and if you're in
let's
black
not
and
forget,
blue, you only have one real one.
Right. I mean, like let's not forget, like City's Blessing, the one Golden Demise, give everything -2/-2. That's not yours. Like that'll do some real damage.
It'll do some real damage.
Decks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What about the one that makes a player sacrifice half their creatures? Like that's pretty good.
Hunger. Yeah.
Right. Like
a lot of them are targeted for one player or just not true board wipes. The only true board wipes really are Fumigate, Hour of Promise, and like Bantu's Last Reckoning. Those are really the only
Star
true.
of Extinction.
Star of Extinction deals damage and it won't kill your Multani sometimes.
Hour of Devastation don't take Multani out.
Exactly, right? So like it's that being said, those are not true board wipes.
Yeah. So I mean that just speaks to a stronger format if you like to negotiate and play. I don't get to put my head down, let my deck do its thing and win. Like I need to negotiate. I need to team up. I need to know when to break alliances. We played a game early on where I was beginning to stumble and I was like, oh, I'm stumbling. I need to make an ally right now and just ride that out the rest of the game. And I hope I'm picking the right person,
right?
So that I can beat them later when the time comes. So I was just like, hey man, I'm in a desperate state. We need to team up. Here's why I'm a great candidate for your ally.
We all know that, and we all know the politics of that and how that can both help and hinder you. Sometimes you got to step on necks, but sometimes taking a person along for the ride with you is what's going to make you push get over the top and win the game. So 3 stars of this deck, I think we don't need to go through it. It's obviously Time Stream Navigator, Multani, and like some other thing.
Yeah, we're not going to do 3 stars because we've also talked about all the cards. And we're not really going to do surprises and discoveries because they're all currently new cards, so it's no surprises. But I just want to do a surprise about Brawl in general, and that's synergy. With a smaller card pool, standard only, there's a lot of hidden synergies that I was discovering as I was playing because that's how they designed these sets.
Right.
They designed the sets to have all kinds of synergies, and it is a treat to just be like, oh, this card and this card work together amazing. And you don't necessarily get to experience that if you're just brewing a traditional commander deck using cards from all over Magic's history.
That's exactly true. So I put together an Ariel Knight of Windgrace, being like, I wonder if the Black White Knight deck is real. And then it was you and I were at Bad Dog and we were talking about this, and you were like, okay, I'll just look up what knights there are and see if there's enough to make like a deck out of it. And you're like, all of the vampires from Ixalan are knights, basically, all of them, and so many of them are legendary that it was like, well, Helm of the Host all of a sudden is great. And I was like, ooh, and Arvad is a vampire knight. And you're like, no, he's not a vampire. He's a human. I'm like, no, man, he's a vampire. So they just, I know they did it on purpose, of course, but it's like, to us, it's like this, randomly Arvad is also a vampire and a knight. Like he's on the Weatherlight, he's doing other things on a different plane. He doesn't have anything to do with the Ixalan vampires and, So, but it just happens to really line up that way. And then you talk about adding the actual Weatherlight, which now digs for historic permanence. So you're talking about all the legendary creatures, the Vona, the Alenda, things like that. So it's really, there's a lot of fun hidden synergies, and I think it's one of the things that makes Brawl really come together.
Oh man, and you want to talk about what's that legendary sorcery that's black white that returns all legendary creatures from your graveyard?
Exactly. Primeval's Glorious Rebirth.
So good.
Made for that deck. Black white knights. You got legendaries. Danitha, Quende. You got all kinds of stuff.
What's it? Marvin Fane.
Yes, Marvin, our boy Marvin. I was very happy to see all that come together. And then I played that deck at the GP, and guess what? It's very fun. It's very, very fun. And it's less annoying than the straight up vampires deck, because the straight up vampires deck, I saw a game featuring it and it just like gained so much life. And that game went on for, I'm not even kidding, that game went on for like 2.5 hours. And I was like, okay, that's a bit long. Like I understand. So I get that. But the night version of it that I made is less about life gain, more just about messing with knights and making Helm of the Host copies, which I guess all my decks are about now.
Yeah, you're obsessed.
I'm obsessed.
So I guess one of the takeaways I want to give away is that don't knock it till you tried it, right? It's easy to be pessimistic and assume that I won't like a lot of things. I was pessimistic too about Brawl, but man, it has been a blast, and I'm glad I gave it a shot. It's been a ton of fun.
I gotta say the same thing. I really do. I was a little bit, pessimistic might be the right word. Feels like more like cautious about it. And I was like, well, we've seen tiny leaders be a thing, but we haven't seen anything that's like officially like, here's Wizards of the Coast people saying that they've played this and they think this is fun. So here, like, let's try and do this. And it's okay. And honestly, it's okay if the player base says, no, we're not interested. Like, right. Like, that's okay too. It's okay to not like Brawl. We're not saying you have to like it. But just give it a shot. Like, if you like fun, like dirtily commander, and if you like synergistic commanders games that have real stories behind them,
lots of politics. If you like politics,
like give it a shot, because this is the kind of stuff this is what happens in Brawl games.
Cool.
And it all is always better when you're playing with friends, right? It's all just better when you're playing with people and how to talk to them and stuff. You might have a different. The thing is, the one thing I will say this too is that, like, at an LGS in a commander game, varying deck strengths all over the place. So maybe actually Brawl is a kind of a better version of play at an LGS, because there is definitely a plateau of deck strength with all of these decks. It's just as powerful as what is in standard, and everyone kind of has the same power level. So there's no misunderstanding someone's power level with their deck, right? Like, oh, I brought my turn 2 combo win. Oh, I brought my, I don't know, a homunculus tribal, which might be a thing now because of Battle Bond. I don't know.
Oh yeah, with Zinder's play.
There's a couple of homunculi in there.
Yeah. Well, so one big minus that people are talking about, no one has any idea how this is going to affect yet, but it's rotation. Brawl is a commander-like format that will rotate, and a lot of people are complaining about that the most, and I hear you. But we've never experienced a rotation yet. We will experience our first one in autumn, so I have created a section called the rotation situation. So I looked at this deck, and I looked at what happened to it if I took away all the Kaladesh Amonkhet rotations. Granted, you could brew a deck that's almost all Kaladesh. If you do the energy deck, the whole thing is going to go away. That's entirely
going to be Kaladesh, and that is going to be gone, yeah.
But this deck in particular, here are the key losses. We lose Rushme, which is really in there just for fun and value and like more business, right? It's not an integral part of the deck. It makes the deck run, but if I put in a good draw spell, it's going to be good anyway. Scribe of the Mindful we lose, which is a very useful card to pull stuff out of the graveyard. We can pay 1 and tap it to return an instant and sorcery from our graveyard to our hand. Sort of a mini Snapcaster on board kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we lose the Desert Lands, which is very nice to have cycling lands in something like this, and it's especially good to have the Ipnu Rivulet. I haven't been reading these cards specifically, but Ipnu Rivulet says add colorless to your mana pool or pay a life and add blue. 1 and a blue, tap, sacrifice a desert. Target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So we're going to do this to ourselves on end step. It's a quicker way to mill. But again, we can recur our spells, and so like maybe once all this rotates, maybe we are less on the mill yourself with speed for Timestream Navigator, and maybe we lean a bit more into recurring spells and recurring our control magics and just beating down with a giant Multani most of the game.
Right. So for this deck specifically, rotation doesn't hit it super hard. Nope. So if you were looking to get into a Brawl deck where you're going to be able to play this consistently, this is a good one. I would rate this like an A, as far as if there is such a rating during the rotation situation segment. I'd say this is like an A to possibly even an A plus. Like we're literally only losing 2 cards in the deck plus some of the lands. Maybe it's an A minus because those desert lands are pretty good. But yeah. But I think every deck in Brawl right now is running the desert lands, right? Like,
yeah, they're just so good.
They're just helpful. They're just really good. So
and
that's a bummer.
I would contest that, like, and we have yet to see what's in M19 and what's in future sets. Like one thing I haven't highlighted here, we're losing a couple draw spells and we're losing a couple counter spells. But guess what? There's a million of those every set, so like no problem.
Of course, yeah. Some draw encounters. You might not get something as good as strategic planning.
Sure.
Which is very, very good for the deck, obviously. But you're going to get something, whatever. It doesn't matter. Put divination in there. It's basically as good.
We might get something better in M19. We don't know yet. Exactly. Like, that's the thing. Everyone's saying, like, oh, when things rotate, my deck gets worse. It's like, well, what if it gets better?
Yeah, there are times where it just straight up gets better.
Right? And the only tough part is if your commander rotates. At the end, when Dominaria rotates in fall of 2019, which I think is when it happens, this whole deck kind of goes in the garbage.
Yeah, and there are other decks where that you just lose the deck entirely. Like if you have a Hapatra Brawl deck right now, like your deck is gone in the fall. It's just not a deck anymore. Your commander's not a deck. All that -1/-1 synergy is gone basically. So like, yeah, you're a bit screwed over by the rotation, which is a bummer. But like as we said when we first heard about Brawl, but now you have the opportunity to have all the cards basically for the start of a good Hapatra commander deck. So now you just graduate that up to commander and you can play that in commander now, and you've got most of the deck. Like for those instances when a full deck rotates out, I actually think you just turn it into a commander deck for an additional little bit. The ones that don't rotate anything out basically are fine. They stay in. You get to play those. And then the middle ground, I think, is where it's going to be the most awkward, right? That's where things get weird. If it's not good
enough to be a commander deck.
Yeah, like what happens when the vampires in my knight deck leave, but my knights stay in?
Well,
it's a pretty like maybe I just go, okay, well now this is knight tribal, and I add a bunch more knights in. But that's drastically changing that deck because now all of a sudden it doesn't care about vampires, and there's some life gain loss and stuff that plays with that. So yeah, things are different.
It's going to be different.
The harder one. That's the harder one.
We have to wait until that happens and see how it affects things. I, for one, think that, like I was thinking about my commander decks. I've got about a dozen commander decks, but there's a few on my shelf that I haven't played in a year, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't played them. Like I just got bored of them for whatever reason. So like if you told me that one rotated halfway through this year, I mean, I'd be like, well, I don't really care because I don't play it anymore anyway. Like, so it's not that big a deal.
Now, not everyone is like that.
That's true. That's true.
Just to be clear, like just being at the GP and chatting with people, like Richard, I think it was telling like one of the guys we hung out with last year at GP Vegas also actually says like he has like 2 commander decks, whereas I have like 13.
Yeah.
So those people aren't going to be tired of their commander deck. They're playing their 2 commander decks all the time, and if you told them one rotated out, they'd be pretty upset about it.
Yeah, and like I mean, Andy and I toyed this idea around before. Like, you might be able to just like, if you're playing with your people at home, you can just like lock it in. It's like, okay, like we'll just lock it in. This Brawl deck is what it is, and it will never change. Like, I'm not allowed to use new cards. I've only got this window, which actually opens up a nice discussion of like, what if we imagined that Brawl was around during different standard environments, and we like set up a little Brawl league where it's like, oh, this Brawl league uses like Zendikar and Shards of Alara blocks and whatever M set was in between them.
I think this is a very fun idea. Like I love this idea of different eras Brawl, like what their Brawl looks like. What's the Innistrad, like what is it, Innistrad Theros block Brawl, like what does that look like? Take any standard meta and do a Brawl deck in it. It's like, that is very interesting to me. I would like that, and that, so I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like, yeah, maybe instead of like at rotation, this goes not into commander, but it goes into some whole meta. I'm not expecting Wizards to like make this a thing or anything, but like at your, you know, at your local meta, or maybe at your store or something that you play at, maybe there's a thing of like, there's Brawl, there's Commander, and then there's like off standard Brawl, where it's like, but it has to be
Brawl.
a standard. Like, yeah, like I don't know what like I don't know, Time Stream Brawl, or like, I don't know, something. Some listeners are gonna be able to come up with something way more clever than that. But like, I actually think that's a very fun idea. Now, here's the problem with it, as far as an actual sanctioned format goes, which is, I'm not suggesting that it be this, but if you know, you do have to like the banned list, as it were, is everything that's not in those standards. So like if a person is like accidentally playing something that wasn't in that standard, or they thought it was, it's like, well, that's technically illegal, you're not allowed to. Or like someone's like getting a little cheeky and they pull something that isn't and they put it in, you know. Yeah, so that's why it could never be real. You can't actually do that. But, you know, if it's just your friends and it's just your meta at home and like your friends aren't cheaters, then I think it's a really cool idea. And I mean, I'll say it right now, I want to see this on Battle of the Brews, and I think we're called doing it. If anyone else does it, they stole it from us.
Okay, yeah, we'll do an era Brawl.
Era, yes. Brawl through the ages.
Brawl through the ages, yes.
There you go.
Using the ban list that came out for its time.
Yeah, so the last effective ban list for it, right?
Right. So no standard has Stoneforge allowed in it, I think.
Right, because it did eventually get banned. And just because it wasn't banned at the beginning, like if it was ever banned during its time in standard, it's banned, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's good.
Like, and this is why, okay, I mean, here's another thing I discovered about Brawl that I really like about it. We tried to do it. The Dinosaur Commander deck doesn't compete. It's not good enough.
Really?
Like it. Well, in Commander it isn't, because you just need...
Commander it isn't. Oh.
In Commander it isn't because you have too many cards. There isn't enough density of dinosaurs. You have to really reach to the weak dinosaurs. And the removal is just nuts in Commander. You have access to the greatest removal of all time, so creature-based strategies can falter quite easily. But in Brawl, the dinosaur deck's super fun, right? Like, you're going to get to do what you want. The deck feels good because all the cards are good, because you have this restricted power level. I don't know. That's, to me, the thing. If you always wanted a dinosaur deck, but felt the Commander wasn't the right place for it, Brawl's your format.
Yeah. It does all depend on who you're playing with, what the decks are like and stuff. I just remember during that Rivals of Ixalan being like, well, now I think there is a dinosaur deck in Commander. How good is it, I guess is the real question, though, right? Like, you can now make that deck and it can do some stuff, but is it really going to stand up against the Narsets and the, you know, Caradors of the world?
I don't think so.
Unfortunately, probably not. But that's why you build it into your Commander Cube instead, and you make it a thing. This is we've been going for an hour and 20 now. This is a good one. I have to go.
We gotta mention the Wizard's Tower.
I have to go to work. We did not even mention Wizard's Tower at all through this. So mention them now. Wizardtower.com. Go check them out. But spoiler alert: we will be talking about Commander Cube, and specifically, we played, like we said at the beginning, Johnny Crass's Commander Cube is so good. And we're going to do an episode about it, I think, in the future. But until then, the budget report.
I mean, we'll keep this tight.
Keep it real tight, yeah.
This deck came in at $37.
Sweet.
And I spared very little expenses. The most expensive cards are Wayward Swordtooth, the 2 and a green dinosaur with Ascend. It's a 5/5, lets you play additional lands. That is up to $5. I also Vizier of the Menagerie is up to about $4, and Ramunap Excavator, letting us play land cards from your graveyard, is up to $2.50, $3. There are two cards that are too pricey for this deck. In my opinion, it would still fit under $50. Is Search for Azcanta, which is great in this deck, but that's a $15 card, and Disallow is a fantastic counterspell, and that's up to $8 or $9. But again, counterspells very replaceable. Search for Azcanta, yeah, it's good, but we can do without it. But the deck is very good without that much. And we could probably even cut Wayward Swordtooth, Vizier of the Menagerie, Ramunap Excavator. We could probably get this down to a $20 deck, and it would still be just as fun.
Great. Awesome. Well, there it is. Give Brawl a chance, basically.
That's the message.
There can be some fun stuff in there, and it might not be as bad as maybe you may have heard. Because a lot of it's one of the things about the Magic community is that it's really great. I love it very much, but sometimes it can get it can turn into a bit of a pile on. One person says something and then everyone just piles on, and then you look on Twitter and you're like, wow, everyone hates Brawl. But it's not necessarily how it is all the time. Or even vice versa too, right? So try it out for yourself. See how you like it. So, building a Brawl deck isn't that big of an investment if we're used to building Commander decks. So, maybe you can convince a couple of your Commander buddies to build up a Brawl deck, and I think you'll have a fun time with it. And it's, it's a nice little change from Commander, especially if you have a very different meta than is a Brawl meta, right? If you have a very different style of playing, usually. You might like it. You might like it. Give it a shot. Okay, well, guys, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to everyone we met and played with and hung out with. And hello and sorry to the people we didn't get to play with, because there was lots of those people too. Sean and I, our overlap time in Vegas wasn't the most. We would have liked that to be a little better. We'll get that going next year, of course. But we had such a good time. Thanks to everyone for listening to the show and being so great. And tell your friends. If there's one thing I learned about this GP was there's so many people who are fans of the show and like the show, and but there's tons of people out there who've never heard and I think would like it. So go out there and mention it to your friends if you want. Grab a playmat. They'll start asking you about it. And that'd be cool. Give us a review on iTunes if you're listening on that format. It is very, very helpful if you haven't done that yet. That would be great. Feel free to leave a comment on YouTube. All that good stuff is all ways to help us. And of course, if you want to give directly, Patreon's always available for you. Get in that Discord chat and have a good time. Talking about new decks, talk about some Brawl decks. What's your experience been with Brawl? That's what we can talk about that too. Okay, great. Gang, so much fun. What a great week. We'll see everyone next week. Brews News is coming up. Bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brews News. I'm Andy.
And I'm Sean. This week, an interview with Joyra, Weatherlight Captain. Thank you, Sean. I am here in person with Joyra, Weatherlight Captain. Joyra, it is an honor to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Okay, great. If you don't mind, I'd just love to ask you some questions, talk about you for a few minutes.
Shoot it out, man.
So we know that you started off originally on Dominaria from a place called Shiv. What was it like growing up in Shiv?
Shiv was great. Really loved Shiv. Just like little tiny knives everywhere that were like really hard to get around. So you had to be real careful, but that it really taught you like quick movement, so that it really helped me with all the things I do now.
And as a promising young wizard, you promptly got accepted into the Tolarian Academy.
Oh.
What did it feel like when you got that
TA! Tolarian alum.
Tolarian alum, yeah. Is that what you all say?
Yeah, TA!
So do you say that with your best friend from school, Teferi, all the time?
All the time, and it's funny because her name's Teferi, so it's kind of similar.
His name's Teferi?
His name's Teferi, he got that long hair, so it's hard.
He's bald. He's totally bald.
Okay, yeah. It's difficult sometimes. We did a lot of drugs, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not in the cards, but it's a family game. I guess that just doesn't show up.
Yeah, it doesn't show up. We weren't allowed.
So then... things took a dark turn when the Phyrexians and the Thran started to invade, and you had to fight for your life, and the school got decimated.
That was a tough day. You go into math class, and you think everything's fine. And then these fire guys show up, and you're like, oh, man, what am I going to do? I guess I got to do all this stuff we've been learning this whole time. So, I came at them with my stuff, and the school got decimated, but I'm still here, so...
And so afterwards, I guess that's when you had a drink from the pool of slowing time.
That's right.
Which is
I
why
saw the pool and I was like, that's pretty cool, man. I'm gonna take a sip.
right, and so and that's why you look like this despite being centuries old.
Yeah, it also a lot of creams. Lot of creams.
Yeah.
You don't think that we use the creams that everybody else uses, but we do. It really still helps. So I drank out of that lake and I use Nivea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super Lake and Nivea. Now, I want to talk for a moment about how you were lost for some time. Going through time, you thought Teferi was lost. You thought your best friend Karn also was lost through time.
Yeah.
What was that dark period? What was that like for you?
It was dark it was really dark. When you're lost in time, it's just all blackness and you can't figure it out and you just got to close your eyes. You know when you're in a dream and you're like, I'm in a dream, and then you fall asleep in the dream?
Oh, yeah, and then you're like, what's a dream, what's real?
What's a dream, what's real? But then you wake up because you've fallen asleep in the dream. That's what I had to do to get out of time.
Yeah, and then now this is not integral to maybe but I just wanted to, I think it's so cute. Your time bug, I just love your time bug. People must ask you all the time. What was the inspiration for your time bug?
The time bug, after I was lost in time, I was one of the only, wizards who had ever been lost in time. So all these outlets were coming at me like to create something like so that I could sell. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to come up with a time bug. And everyone can have one. Everyone gets their own time bug. So that's where time bug came from.
Great. And can you speak for a moment? We all thought Teferi was lost. Mm-hmm. He had phased out. But when you were reunited with him, and Karn, the three amigos back together, what was that moment like?
Oh, it was great. Me, Karn, Teferi.
Yep.
Yeah. We just reconnected so fast. We went to Boston Pizza.
Boston Pizza, they have those in Dominaria.
Yeah, they don't have them in the States, but they definitely have them in Dominaria.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and it was great. We just did that. We got my time bug out, and there's this game you can play with time bug, and we played the time bug game.
And it's nice to see you reunited. I love to see old friends back together again, and knowing that Karn, one of Urza's constructs, was
who would have thought?
Right, that you named after all, and after a Thran word because it was so symbolic for you.
Yeah, Karn,
which we all know means
too
mighty,
too mighty,
too mighty,
too mighty. Not just one mighty, it means too mighty.
It means two. Oh, we just thought it meant mighty.
No, it means too mighty.
We didn't live with the Thran. We don't know the Thran language.
The Thran, yeah. The two is in there for sure. Okay. Too mighty.
Well, Jora, that takes us up to all we know about your history in the present. What do you have plans for in the future? What's next for Jora?
Okay, so I drank out of that time lake.
Yeah, like 400 years ago.
Yeah, so now I want a new lake. I want to go find a lake that's going to help me. I want extra arms and legs because I saw this spider. What's the spider guy?
There's lots. Oh, a spider person. Do you mean Ikra Shidiki? No. I forget.
Okay.
There's a spider.
A spider. I want to be like them. So I want to find a spider lake, and maybe I don't know. I'd love to have longer hair. Maybe find a hair lake. Any kind of lake that's going to help me out. I want to take a sip from.
Well, just as a warning, I cannot recommend our viewers to drink from random lakes. There's a very real possibility of dysentery.
Unless it has a sign that says a Big Hand Lake or Live Forever Lake. But I did that, basically. The time lake helped me live forever.
Yeah. Now, on our way out, I want to thank you for being here. Just any final thoughts on what it's like to basically be immortal?
It's sick. It's great. You get to float through time. You get to see all this stuff. You start figuring out life and how to work it, so you can really scam people really easily. You get I get on transit for free every place I go, no problem, because I know all the ins and outs.
Well, there you have it, folks. Jora, rescuer of Dominaria and scammer of transit. Back to you, Sean and Andy.
Too mighty.
Thank you, Sean. Huh. I guess she is centuries old. It would stand to reason she's a bit forgetful.
I was about to say, just because you're immortal doesn't mean you retain all the memories, right?
Right. You still have flawed memories like everyone else.
You age slowly, but you still can't remember what happened to you last week, or in this case, the biggest events of your life.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Fair enough. Anyways, that's it for us this week. We're all tapped out, so we'll pass the turn over to you.
Bye.
Good night.
If you want to contact us, I'm at Sean Tabaris.
And I'm at Andy Holbone.
Send us an email at commandersbrew@gmail.com.
You can find out when we go live on Twitch if you follow us at twitch.tv.
And if you care to support us on Patreon, check us out at patreon.com.
And you can find our deck list on tappedout.net.
And if we forgot anything, commandersbrew.com.